And salutations, everyone. I hope everyone is still doing well, and welcome to this Father's Day night ending bonus upload. Before we jump into it, a couple quick links. As many of you know, I rely on Patreon, PayPal, channel membership, and the merch to help the channel to continue to grow and go. Links to Patreon, PayPal, and channel membership is in the description below. Merch displayed directly under the video. Also, Dogman Frightening Encounters, Volume 1 through 3, the audiobook versions. They were written and researched by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeff Nadolny. Those audiobooks are available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes, links to which are also in the description as well. And finally, last but definitely not least, if you'd really like to help support the channel to continue to grow and go, simply subscribe. It does not cost a cent. Click the like button. It takes half a second. If you don't want to miss out on any of the informative uploads that I put out daily, click the bell icon, and folks, please leave a comment and share the video. Why? Well, because all of these things really do help the channel to continue to grow and go. They definitely do matter, and they are appreciated. And with that, I have taken far too much of your time. Let's jump in to this night-ending bonus upload, shall we? Today's first part of the upload. It was during my third deployment to Iraq. The platoon had taken up residence in 2 houses in a village several miles south of Haditha. One day I heard our translator having a heated discussion with 2 local men. I grabbed my gear and my rifle and walked out to the road to investigate. I asked the translator what was going on. He tells me that these 2 men are crazy and assures me that they are not dangerous. I ask what they want, and he mumbles about them being superstitious or something along those lines, and assures me again that everything is okay, and my attention is not needed. It took a bit of prying, but my translator finally says that they are having a wolfman problem, but they are afraid that if they shoot it, the local troops will be alarmed and attack their home. They tell us that this wolfman has been coming around late at night, and has already killed a few sheep. They're worried that it's going to start attacking their family. So I assume somewhere in the translation the word dog has turned into wolf, and it is somehow being conveyed to me by the translator as wolfman. So I try to clarify. Do they mean a dog? The translator is a bit hesitant, almost like he's embarrassed that his countrymen are wasting everyone's time by believing in such nonsense. But they are adamant that their house is being besieged by a wolfman. Again, I ask if it's just a big dog, and no, it's a wolfman. So I ask if there are any wolves in Iraq, and they are all in agreement that yes, there are wolves in Iraq. But there are no wolves in this part of the country, and it's not a wolf or a large dog that has been killing their sheep. It's a wolfman. The translator is trying to usher them away, but at this point I'm very intrigued. And still a bit confused over the whole dog, wolf, wolfman thing. So I ask them to describe what they're seeing. They tell me that every few nights it comes around. They first see it on 4 legs as it sulks around their small compound. But then it stands up like a man and walks on 2 legs. It growls and has lunged at the men, but as they retreat it turns its attention to the sheep. Their own dogs refuse to help protect the humans or the sheep. They tell me the creature has killed a few of their sheep, and they've even found one of the bodies, ripped apart with portions of it eaten away. They've been hesitant to shoot for fear of troop involvement. The translator says that he has heard of such a creature, and even though this type of story has been spread through the area by various people, it is no more than superstition and delusion. He assures me there is no such thing as the wolfman. I tell the 2 men that they should feel free to protect themselves and their livestock, and with my interest piqued, I get the men to agree to allow us to stop by from time to time and set up an observation post while we're out on patrol. A couple nights later, I joined a night patrol and we head towards the house. We're greeted by one of the men and he gives us entry to the compound. We go up to the roof and set up sentries to overlook a nearby bridge. An hour later, the homeowner comes up with a panicked look on his face. He's talking very fast, excitement and concern in his voice and body language. He's wanting me to come with him. I tell the other two to come with me and follow the man. He leads us to the other side of the house. We exit onto an enclosed courtyard where the sheep are being kept. The sheep are making plenty of noise, and the man is pointing to a dark corner of the yard. I strain my eyes to see what he's pointing at. Finally, I see it, a large wolf dog just standing in the corner. I ask the other two guys with me if they see it as well, and they both agree that it's a wolf or a dog. It moves behind a small section of the wall, and we could hear a popping, crackling noise, like joints or knuckles being cracked. When it steps out from behind the wall, it's upright on its hind legs. Swiftly and effortlessly, it jumps the perimeter wall. We could hear it running away on 2 feet. I conveyed to the man as best as I could, if that thing ever shows up again, feel free to shoot it if he can. And if he does, please let me know. Today's next part of the upload, but connected to the first part. You'll see why. When I was serving in Afghanistan, I witnessed some strange stuff. First of all, I didn't see any creatures, but I encountered some weird stuff. One of the roles I served was essentially a hearts and minds role in an effort we made to get to know the locals and to get them to look at us in a better light. Just simple things like giving out food, building things, bringing the kids footballs, etc. A family we constantly met was a family of goat farmers. Over the weeks, we got pretty friendly and would share stories through our translator. One day, I was talking to him about his goats and how hard life was out here. He said it'd be fine, but the only thing that bothered him was the bot. I initially thought it was a local Taliban strongman or something, but he said no, it was an animal. Now this next bit is said through the translator, so bear in mind he said it's a running wolf. Myself and the translator didn't really know what he meant, but he just said again, a wolf that runs like a man. He then asked us to follow him. Initially I refused, but eventually relented, as I felt he would not lead us into danger, and it may offend him if I did not. He led us to a cave about 30 minutes away. In the cave we found what looked like crude drawings on the wall. Nothing you could make out well, but definitely something someone had drawn by scraping rock. But more disturbing was several gouged lines in the rock, about 1/3 of an inch deep and about 1 foot long. We had made a joke about it, but I tried cutting a similar mark into the wall with my knife, but I could not do so. Bear in mind I've been powerlifting since I was 16, so I'm pretty strong, but couldn't even come close. The biggest red flag, however, was the remains of what I think was goat carcasses. The cave was about 300 yards up a 60-degree incline. I don't know how a fox, which is the only predator I saw out there, could A, kill a goat, B, drag it from the closest farm, 1.5 kilometers away, up a slope into the mountains. It freaked me out, to be honest. For the remaining 3 months of our tour, I heard noises a few times a week, sounding like a woman wailing. Might be something, or might just be a grown man being scared by a shepherd's story. I'm not weighing in on if it was real or not, but I did find it compelling. Alright, so I'm going to go off the top of my head with this because I looked for this subscriber's experience in my filing cabinet of clutter but cannot find it. After reading these two experiences or encounters, I remembered about a subscriber sending me his experience when he was stationed over in the Middle East. I don't remember if it was Iraq or Afghanistan, but they were patrolling a smaller village, and they became pretty friendly with the locals. They got accustomed to their ways. They were watching things. But these soldiers were stationed away from this village. So they weren't there at night. They were there during the day, not every day, but, enough to where they became friendly through gifts of water, food, etc. And, they noticed how the kids would sleep on these like little hammocks right outside, right outside of their home with a dog next to them. They were aware of, a lot of the locals would sleep on their roofs during the summer, no air conditioning. And, where else would you sleep on a hot day when you have a flat roof? And there's a predator lurking around. Of course you're going to go to your roof. So they end up talking to one of these villagers, or locals, and these locals convey to the military through a translator about these just walking creatures that resemble a dog, bipedal walking creatures that resemble a dog. The higher up, which wasn't really the higher up, but he was higher up the pecking order than the subscriber was, decided to go and figure out what the hell is messing with this village. So they set up shop on this villager's roof. They're positioned at all points of the roof. I think there was maybe 6 to 8 men. So there's 4 men on the roof. Maybe 5 or 6 spotters. But at all directions, they were looking for whatever was plaguing this village. Well, as they're sitting there, they're looking through their night vision, and this guy kind of catches some movement off to the side on the roof. So as he does, he kind of turns his attention to it, and what he describes as just this enormous creature that looked like a dog stood up and just jumped off the roof, and just disappeared in seconds. So they end up shooting at it a couple times, but they do catch it in the night vision, and that's the end of that. But it reminded me of these two because, we think of ourselves in just our country. I know I have subscribers throughout the world, but a lot of people just kind of view Dogman as being an American thing, but they're not. I mean, yeah, they've got some over in England, the Shuck and stuff like that. Old Stinker. And these like ancient, Anubis and stuff like that. But these creatures are there. I mean, they've got caves over in the Middle East that these things can just hide in. So yeah, they did. This creature just stood up from underneath this tarp and just gone. And it's almost like it was lying in wait for the villager to come up instead of the soldiers to possibly just massacre the family. So it's kind of a good thing they were there. But I don't really know. Yeah, they're just everywhere. And another thing that keyed into me real quick was the cave on the second part of the encounter, when they were talking about how this villager led them to the cave and there was these claw marks in the cave. Well, that reminded me of the caves that were dug out by some sort of creature or animal down, I believe in Brazil. I shared it with you guys a while ago. And it was not done by man. There was just perfectly carved out tunnels that ranged in height, but they could see these just enormous claw marks that dug them out. And they weren't done by erosion or, anything like that. It was well before humans moved into the picture, I guess. But yeah, so these things are everywhere. And I find it compelling that so many different cultures have a belief in these things. But now I'm just rambling. I apologize. These two really kind of struck a chord with me, with the subscriber sharing that one encounter with me a while back, and the claw marks in the cave. So once again, apologize for the rambling, like a rambling man. Today's next encounter. I ran into a friend of mine and we started chatting. She said she was going through a tough time and living in a tent with her boyfriend and dog by the Rogue River in southern Oregon. She told me of some strange events they were experiencing at night while sleeping in their tent. Something was coming into close proximity of their tent, making grunting and snorting sounds. Occasionally, a terrifying scream sound that she could best describe as a woman wailing in distress. Even on occasion that they weren't hearing anything distinct. Their large cane corso would take notice of a twig snapping, whimper, and then belly crawl onto them, and proceed to whimper and shake in terror. While all this activity was mystifying to them, to me, it sounded suspiciously similar to some events that I heard. I made arrangements to go out to the property they were staying on, right along the Rogue River, to see if I saw any strange happenings. The first night there was nothing notable. However, I did speak to one of the people staying on the property, in a dwelling closer to the front of the property's house. I asked him if he had seen anything strange on the property, and he told me that one night he had heard some kind of violent altercation near the river. The next day he went down to the river's edge. On its muddy shores looked like two beings had scraped it out. The ground was tore up, and it led into the river itself, leading him to believe something had been killed, something else, and dragged it into the river. I asked him if he had any idea of what was fighting, and he said he had no idea. But he did mention his belief in a humanoid-type being that crawled on all fours, longed for limbed gray skin, and moved extremely fast because of the length of its slender limbs. And for whatever reason, he didn't elaborate on believing they came out of the trees and would slither down them at night. Pretty weird. I'm pretty certain this guy's rolling the meth pipe pretty hard, but I couldn't help notice how closely his description of this thing was to a thing called the rake, or a crawler. The second night I was perched on the second-story deck of the house facing the river. The friend that brought me to the property, along with her boyfriend, had left for the night. I didn't mind hanging out on the deck as it was a warm summer night, and occasionally I would hang out with the house tenants and come back out to observe. The rear portion of this property is about half an acre long and narrow. To the right is an empty house, and even further to the right is an old lodge or retreat from the 50s that has long since been abandoned and became decrepit. To the left sat a wreckage yard separated by a 10-foot hedgerow that ran the entirety of the property down to the river. As I sat there on the deck chain-smoking, I had this internal dialogue with myself and it, asking it to reveal itself to me, projecting the thought of, "I come in peace, please don't kill me." As I sat on the deck smoking and reading, I heard twigs snapping and gentle rustling in the hedgerow closer to the river. I stood up, gazing down at the sapling positioned closely to the hedgerow. and watched as a large silhouette appeared out of the nothingness. Somehow traversing a wall of nearly impenetrable hedgerow without causing a cacophony, save a snapping of a twig and some rustling of leaves, or somehow scaling down from the massive tree that sat along the river's edge. And while I could distinctly see this thing's silhouette, I was unable to make out its distinctive features as it stayed just out of the illumination of the deck's nightlight. Although I didn't need to see it to distinctly know what it was, as its interlit amber eyes were a telltale clue. No natural animal has eyes like this. Its eyes are not highly reflective like a cat's. They are literally creating light, glowing in amber color. Its eyes were separated about 7 to 8 inches, and it stood about 7 feet tall. Simultaneously, as this entity stepped forward to make itself known, I saw at least a few sets of self-lit amber eyes peering through the hedgerow in my direction. I'd prepared mentally for this moment. That's why I was here. I was scared, who wouldn't be, but my curiosity outweighed my self-preservation at the time. The feeling I had gazing down on this thing can only be described as an adrenaline dump. It didn't show any aggression. It basically did what I had hoped for. It came forward and presented itself. It stood there, stared at me for what seemed like 10 minutes, but in reality was 30 seconds, before I internally projected respect and gratitude for the encounter and turned and walked into the house. So, right there, we've got an encounter or second-hand telling of a dogman fighting with these creatures, crawlers, flesh gates, what have you, the rake. As much as I hate that name, it's the name that it really kind of sticks with them and people identify. I really can imagine these creatures, fighting for the position of apex predator. Even though these creatures are very scrawny, there's a reason why they have survived out in the wilderness for a long time now. Because they are strong, they are fearless, they're tough, and you'd have to be to fight a dogman. I mean, I'm sure whatever was causing the skirmish down at the river was a dogman getting the better of one of these creatures, but we'll never know because we didn't see it. We can only speculate on it. Today's final part of the upload is a thought-to-be terrifying skinwalker experience. This happened somewhere around 2006 to 2008 in northern Arizona on the Navajo res. Just to set up a little, I've heard quite a few of the older skinwalker tales and seen a few unknown things personally. Now, from what I remember, there are a couple different common forms that a skinwalker takes. The most common and well-known form is the coyote skin, the second, bird feathers, and the last is nude, but only wearing Navajo beads. If I recall correctly, they are long strands of beads hung around the neck and shoulders. And the skinwalker's weakness comes from their identity being known. It is said that if you figure out who that person is, the next day that person will show up dead. I was working in the area as an emergency medical technician for the Navajo Nation. My dad, full-blooded Navajo, and my mother is Caucasian. I mostly grew up in California, but we continued to go back to the res, so it always felt like home to me. It felt so much like home that in my 20s I moved to the res and worked there for several years, which brings us back to the experience. We were a 911 only ambulance, meaning that we didn't do patient transports between hospitals. Our main and only function was to assist in medical emergencies. It was the end of spring and transitioning into summer, so it was a fairly hot day. My partner and I had a pretty uneventful morning, and we were just parked in the middle of town waiting for calls. We got paged out for a medical assistance, and dispatch reported an elderly female, victim of an assault, who had called 911. She lived in a town about 30 minutes away. If I floored it the whole way, which we did. Top speed was about 85 until the limiter kicked in. We flipped the lights on and sirens and flew out of town, going code 3 the whole way. As we continued screaming down the highway, we got more and more information as dispatch was still on the telephone with the victim. Unfortunately, the info only gets worse. The elderly woman had been sexually assaulted and was beaten up. She reported severe pain in her chest and abdomen, as well as difficult breathing. We asked dispatch to give a call to an air ambulance that serviced our area in anticipation that we would need to airlift her out due to bad roads and time limitations. Our plan was to arrive to the scene, stabilize our patient, and have the helicopter fly her to a facility that could perform emergency surgery. Then, dispatch gave us more information. The attacker, whom the woman did not know, a man who had savagely beaten her, was still at her house and sleeping in her bed. Oh, and one more thing. There are no police units available, and we were on our own. Now, according to protocol and training, we are supposed to set up just outside of a crime scene, wait for police to secure the scene, and make sure it's safe. We couldn't wait. The victim needed assistance. The plan was simple. My partner was going to try to get the patient removed from the scene, while I would run interference should the suspect decide to attack us. Luckily, neither of us had to do that because a police officer from another district who had heard the call arrived on scene as well. The officer took the suspect into custody while we started taking care of the patient. I didn't see the suspect at first, as I was focused on the elderly woman, but I noticed him when they walked him outside of the house. Normally, I probably wouldn't have noticed, but this was different. The suspect was about 2 feet taller than me, and I'm 6'4", very well built, clearly native, long black hair, and naked as possible, with the exception of long strands of beads. Another weird thing is that he never spoke a word. It almost seemed to be in a trance. I wondered if he had taken some hallucinogenics or PCP or something like that, and was now coming down. But something about him didn't seem right. They got him into the police cruiser, but that wasn't the last I would see of him. Our patient was experiencing severe pain. Initial exam of the patient revealed bruising and abrasions all over her upper body and face. It was very obvious this woman had gone through a lot. She was having chest pains, and when we palpated her chest and abdomen, we felt crepitus, indicative of broken ribs. It's basically a broken bone rubbing together. She said he had jumped up and down on her very violently. We did as much as we could for her, gave her morphine and packaged her on the backboard and assisted the flight crew when the helicopter arrived. She was flown out without incident and was stable. I never heard anything more about the patient, which is generally a good thing. We usually hear if a patient didn't make it, but as far as I know, she survived the incident. We were on our way back to our local district, and we went straight to the ER. Shift came around, and we met the crew that was relieving us at the back door of the emergency room. Told them what had happened earlier. I had my back to the parking lot and was telling my coworkers about the patient, but then started telling them about the suspect. I was in a spirited description of the guy. Pretty sure I was in the middle of saying, this guy was effing huge, bigger than me, buck naked, black long hair, only wearing beads, and he looked out of it, when I noticed the look of my coworker's face, looking over my shoulder. As I had been talking, a police cruiser had pulled up behind me. The two people came out of it, a police officer and the very guy I was describing. It seemed as though he was looking through me. His head was down with his hair in his face, but now he was wearing a jail jumpsuit, cuffed at the wrist and ankles. Apparently, they brought him in because he was acting so strangely, and they weren't sure if he was a medical problem. He hadn't spoken a word. They were completely unable to identify him. His fingerprints didn't match any database, and the name he had written down for them came back as not being in the database. As far as we knew, he didn't exist. He was examined by the doctor, and they did a blood toxin screen and a bunch of other diagnostic tests, and nothing came back abnormal. He was released from the ER, taken back into police custody, and that was the last time I ever saw him. I heard later that he had disappeared from custody, either overnight at jail or being transported. He wasn't local or known in the area where the crime had been committed. No one knew him. No one had ever heard of him. I never knew whether or not there was something paranormal going on with that guy, but his demeanor and beads and his total anonymity certainly had everyone involved talking about whether or not he was a skinwalker. Folks, there you have it. This night-ending bonus. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed sharing it with you. I'd like to thank you all for supporting the channel. It is your support, after all, that helps the channel to continue to grow and go, and what gives us all a place and a chance to share our experiences and theories judgment-free. Everyone is simply treated with the respect that we deserve. Please stay safe, happy, healthy, and ever vigilant, keeping an eye on our children, pets, family, and our friends. These creatures are real. These events have happened. Share this information with those you love and care about, and it may just help save their lives someday. Until next time, never stop asking questions, never stop searching for the truth, and God bless you all.